Okay, I think we are live. Obviously, just let me know if anything isn't working on your end, but it looks like it's all good on mine. Very happy about that. So, where are we starting? I'm excited today. Today we are actually painting one of my commissions. I got an influx of about 20 commissions so far from my TCL TV appearance, which was magical, and I am so excited. I've gone through all the photos I'm about to paint. Wow, I'm really lucky because these are some cute dogs. Very excited to paint them. So today we are painting Hazel, a brown Chihuahua, and today's video was supposed to be just a brown dog paint along. And I had a kind of a backup photo ready to go, but that isn't a commission, and since I have so many commissions to do, I decided to just plop this one in here as a substitution. But it's actually kind of cool because this dog has dark brown and light brown. So it'll even be a more comprehensive tutorial for you, which is awesome. So I wanted to give you a little peek behind the curtain and show you what people fill out after they order a commission, because I know some of you might be doing commissions yourselves or hoping to do commissions, and I thought, well, this might be a little bit of a fun thing for you to see. So obviously I have them fill out all their info for shipping, and then I have them let me know if it's a gift, because that way I can both include a little card and make sure I don't show it on social media until after the recipient receives the commission. I give portraits away at fundraisers, so I always want to know if somebody won the portrait, where it came from. And then of course if they need it, quick for if it's a gift or something, the name of the pet, if they want it portrait or landscape. Sometimes I have to decide that myself depending on the photo that they send me. I'm able to write the subject's name underneath my signature. Some people like that. Any special requests, how they found out about me, which is always very helpful for me. And then they can upload their pictures all in this one form. And then I talk about how the rights for resale and reproduction and my happiness promise, and then also that I get to use their photo on videos like this for YouTube. So that is all something that they fill out after they order the portrait. And it's just worked really well for me to kind of have that little system in place to keep things really streamlined. So I just wanted to share that with you because it's pretty interesting. The other thing I thought would be kind of cool is just going quickly over the updates that we have for the calendar, because I did replace these 3 dogs. So today's video is down to the Chihuahua. The white animals video is, I'm going to feature a husky, and of course I'm also going to feature the Westie that I kind of teased on social. A lot of people were like, how did you do that? So I want to go over what I did for that Westie, and really the secret sauce is a shadow side and a highlight side, especially with white dogs. It's important to add color. And then I switched up the orange dog. So these are all 3 commissions that I am excited to do. And then I kept the corgi. The corgi is not a commission, but I know somebody in particular was very excited to paint the corgi, and since it's a corgi, I can't really switch that out. So we are doing the corgi too, and then of course we'll finish the month off with the pink fish and the Q&A live with some really cool student artwork that I've been getting, which has been really fun to see. I'm a little behind on updating the website with the more recent artwork that I've been getting. So just hang tight for that, because I will get it up there definitely before that live Q&A. So keep going with whatever questions you have in the chat. I will, keep an eye on that as we go along. Today, we're just going to dive into the painting plan for Hazel. So this is in the video's description, this link, and the link to the reference photo and the tracing. It's all in there for you. The mood I get from Hazel is that she's really cute. So we're going for cute today. And I'm also going to lean into more natural colors, with purple being the really punchy shadow color, like a nice vibrant purple. And of course she's wearing a purple sweater. So we have purple is going to be the beautiful accent color, and the rest of the colors we're going to try to keep it into a more natural vibe. So I think that that's what's going to look good. That's kind of what spoke to me. The other thing I wanted to show you before we start, is that for the brown, today I'm actually going to try my hand at this core color that's called transparent red oxide. And normally for my browns, like my goldy browns, I will use American Journey quinacridone gold. You can obviously use whatever brand of quinacridone gold you have. But the magic is, see, I really like quinacridone gold because it's this bright yellowy gold versus this kind of more rusty gold color that I got from Core. But here's the thing. When I mixed neutral tint, which is this part, we get this greenish color, right? It's kind of a green vibe when you mix neutral tint with quinacridone gold. And I don't like that. I get around it by kind of making it purpley by adding opera pink into it and making it a little bit more purple. And so you can definitely do that. You can, there's workarounds for everything. But I thought, you know what? I really like how this neutral tint mixed with this transparent red oxide from Core. So for Hazel here, I'm going to try to get away with doing that. I might have to incorporate some of that color. We'll see as we go, but we're also going to be using buff titanium. And if I need to brighten it up a little bit, I wouldn't be afraid to add azo yellow, but azo yellow can be really dominating and rainbowy. It turns the painting, it can turn the painting into kind of a rainbow. So if we're going for more natural colors, I'm going to try to stay away from that if I can. We'll see. So right away what I want to do is I want to mix up the two purples that I'm hoping to use for the shadow color and for the sweater. So we know that purple is just pink plus blue or red plus blue. So I'm using my opera pink and my ultramarine blue to create the purples. And I'm hoping, we'll see, maybe a watery mix for the lighter purple, but I'm wondering if just adding some buff titanium would make a really pretty lilac purple. So we have like a punchy purple color for the shadow. And then I want to create more of a lilac color. So we could just kind of do a watery mix. And that looks good. But let's just see what happens when we add buff titanium to the punchier purple. And that looks good too. So there's two options there for you. And these colors are going to look a little bit wonky because this is just plain printer paper. It's kind of silly. And then of course we're going to have our neutral tint for the really dark darks. We'll have our buff titanium for those nice little creamy tan accents around her face. And then of course we're going to try to mix up, we'll have like a darker brown, which is that transparent red oxide from Core. And it can go into this dark to light type shade. And then of course we can also mix that with neutral tint to get an even darker, really rich brown. So that's kind of what I'm hoping the color palette will be, is just these colors right here. So of course, if you watched my eye video, you know that we start with eyes, just to make sure we get those perfectly ready to go. And then we know we're in a good position to do the rest to keep painting. All right, so I wanted just to quick show you too with the eyes. You have the tracing, but what I love to do, especially with eyes, is really get in there and draw them out so that they look good before I even start painting. It's something like if you don't have the proportions right, and you're like, oh, the paint will fix it, or, it's a little bit wonky, but maybe once I paint it, it'll be fine. Chances are it won't. So I like to make sure, okay, the eyes look like they're in the right spot. They look like they're the same size. They look proportional. They look good before I even start painting. So I always take time to refine the drawing, especially on the eyes and the nose. So I already did that. So then I'll go in and do the nose. And then I'm thinking we'll take a little break and maybe do the ears, because those are always really fun and really fast. And then we'll probably try to finish out the muzzle. And then we can go in and do the sweater. And then of course we'll do the dark side, which is when you're looking at the paper, it'll be this right side. And this reference photo, if you have it up, if you're looking at it, it already has a really obvious light source. So it already has that really obvious highlight side and shadow side. So it's already making our lives a lot easier in that respect. And then we'll finish off with the light side. And then of course you can do, if you want any kind of finishing touches like splatter, sign it, whatever you need to do. And today, of course, we're using a grainer brush. We'll definitely be featuring that as we go. So let me get everything back into frame here. I zoomed in quite a bit on the eyes and the nose just because that's kind of what we're starting with. I'm going to get my reference photo large. So let's see, yay. Okay, we don't have any questions quite yet. That's great. So let's just, but I mean, it's great if you ask a question too. So don't be shy. I will be answering them as we go. So this part of my palette, this is where the core color, transparent red oxide is. So if I'm reaching for that, you know that that's what that is. I'm gonna try to keep the colors I'm using in frame for you guys. And 3-step eyes, if you were able to watch that video, we always start with the darkest darks and give ourselves a little bit of a heads up. The other thing what we could do too is I can show you, I have the main reference photo here, and I also did a brighter version. So I just went in Canva and I brightened it up a ton so we could see more detail in the eyes and in the nose. So this might be the reference photo that I'm going to look at while I do the eyes. Because the cool thing is we can always go back and make them darker, but sometimes it can be harder to make them lighter. I have a friend who's doing really well on YouTube. She's an author. Her name's Bethany Atazada. She's on YouTube if you like to write. Or I didn't bring a water in here. Okay, we'll see how long I last without a drink. Anyway, but she told me that on her live she likes to. All right, I gotta take a quick pause, you guys. I'll be right back in like 1 minute. I gotta get some water. Okay, I'm back. Anyway, what I was saying is that she does lives too, but she said it's kind of fun for her. She likes to add music to her lives. So if you think that would be fun, let me know in the chat. I was kind of thinking that maybe on your own, you could listen to the music that you really like to listen to. Because you could just have, you know, your music streaming as we're painting together in the background. I feel like that's what I would prefer if I was painting along with the live. So I'm just doing the darkest darks. We're working quite a bit smaller than the 22 by 28 size that we've been doing for dogs. So I'm taking my time and trying to make sure I get the lines as fine as they need to be. I have a heavy mix of neutral tint on my silver black velvet size 6 round brush. Just trying to think here where everything is. Sometimes it's just nice to get myself a little bit of a lay of the land. Giving myself outlines around the eye too can be helpful. And then I like to take my other size 6 round brush and try to just keep it for my water brush. So I'm just going in here and maybe softening some of the edges a little bit. A lot of these edges are actually pretty tight, so we don't need to do too much of that. And this eye is in shadow. It's quite a bit darker. So this is kind of the boring piece of the painting, but it's really important. So I always try to take my time with this one. And she's got some detail, some darker detail around her eye here too. And softening some of that in. Okay. So let's see. That we kind of like to have dry before we do the iris. So why don't we do the same thing on her cute little nose with the outlines. I'm kind of softening it in a little bit because that line got kind of thick over there. So I'm just coming in and making it blend like into the nose a little bit more. And I'm just trying to be a little bit lighter, not so heavy-handed on the light side here over on this side of the nose. And I'm just gonna maybe see if I can blend that in a tiny bit too. Fun. That looks so good. This is really heavy right here. So I'm just taking a little bit of it off so it dries a little faster. So we can get in there and do the iris a little bit sooner. Okay, this one's looking like it could be ready. So I'm gonna do that new color, that really pretty core transparent red oxide. I'm gonna get a heavy mix. And if we were working bigger, I would definitely not be afraid to do the 3-step process and paint with water and then add the color. But this is small. This is a small painting. And it's kind of a small area. So I'm just going to go in right with the heavy mix onto dry paper with that gold brown color. And I'm kind of touching the iris and the outside of the eye. And what I'm going to do now is paint with water. I'm gonna blot it a little bit because I don't want it to go everywhere, and see if I can let it just bleed into these areas up here. I'm just gonna dot some more of that color in. And my review video for Core is out on Saturday, so this Saturday. And this is the first time I'm using Core. I'm gonna film that video later today. This is the only, well actually I spoke wrong because I did try the Interference Violet yesterday to see if we should use it for this painting. And I quickly learned that I need to learn more about interference colors because it was weird. And I'm sure it's very cool, but I didn't really get it. So I'm gonna have to dive into that a little bit more for the video. Okay, the other thing I kind of like to do is, this eye is so muddled that I don't mind getting it kind of almost where you're not quite sure where the pupil begins and the iris begins. They're kind of almost like one muddly color in certain spots. So I'm not afraid to let those blend a little bit. And then I just removed a little bit of color here with my blotted brush, a little bit of color in water to give that bottom part of the iris a little bit of a highlight, and I think that looks really nice. And if that ends up filling in, we can go back in and lift it if we need to. So let's go ahead and do the same thing on the other eye. And this one will be lighter. It just has more light coming into it, so it's not really in shadow, which is great because we'll be able to just give it a little bit more life. It'll look really nice. So I added that heavy mix. I'm coming in with a blotted wet brush. I'm just gonna move it into this part up here and lift some of it off. And add water, see if that pushes it around too. And then I'm gonna blend a little bit of that black in. Over here. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, no music, no music. Okay, yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I'm just checking in on the chat. I'm thinking no music because you guys can add music on your own if you want that. But then if I play music on my end, you have no choice. I'd rather just give you that option. So I'm dropping in a little bit more of that beautiful brown gold color. And it's still really wet, so it's blending and making these pretty subtle. They're subtle right now, granulations. I'm just gonna drop in a little bit of water, see if that pushes things out. I'm gonna do, ooh, that was a lot. I'm gonna do that over here too. And drop in a little bit of color. This eye should be quite a bit darker than the other eye. That's not really pushing the way I was hoping it would, so I'm gonna lift it out. That looks really nice. I like that a lot. It's so fun when it starts taking shape. It's like we've just started, but it's fun. Things are working and it's fun. Let's see if we can, what I love doing is pulling color even to create little details, because there's a lot of pigment that we can work with. We don't always have to go back into our palette to catch the pigment. We can pick it up. Well, that really picked it up. Didn't really want to go that far. But we can kind of pick it up and soften it and make these little details with the pigment that's already on our paper, and I like doing that if I can. So I'm just kind of doing that here. Okay, we are gonna wanna let that dry more, and then we'll come in with our reflection color and soften those reflections. So, excuse me, I'm wondering if we can do the nose, but the nose has some dark, they're pretty dark. What to do? What to do? I don't want those to bleed. I'd feel more comfortable if those were dry. Let's see if we can just pull some out. And then they'll dry quite a bit faster. Yeah, that's good. The nose will dry a lot faster now. So I'm just blotting some of that extra pigment out. And now that will dry. I think we'll go ahead and go for it. And we can do that nose. And what I want to do then is try to just kind of stay away from the nostrils a little bit so that they don't bleed into the rest of the nose. I'm going to tint my water with some of that red oxide color so you can see where I'm putting it, but I'm basically just putting it all over the nose shape and giving myself a little bit of room around the nostrils so they don't bleed into it. And I just love the 3-step process on a nose and letting the colors bleed in and mix by themselves. It's so beautiful. Now I did say no azo yellow, and look at me, I'm using it right away, but I kind of, I'm gonna put it over here. I was just thinking, you know what? That could look really good. So I put a little bit there, and then I'm gonna come in with my opera pink. Really kind of pretty pink, purpley brown nose. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this kind of everywhere. Definitely everywhere on the shadow side, and then a little bit on the highlight side. And just tapping my brush in there to really release the pigment into the pool of water. Otherwise, your pool of water is just gonna go into your drier brush. So tapping, just kind of tapping it in. Then let's go back in with some of that red oxide. Again, if you're using quinacridone gold, that is just fine. Especially right now, because we're not mixing it with neutral tint here in the nose. So that gave it a really pretty brown color. And yes, core definitely spreads because that kind of dominated the whole thing. I'm gonna go ahead and drop in more water on the light side and push it. Trying to push that paint into the shadow side a little bit while I'm kind of lifting the highlight side. And you'll see too, I didn't really do a full outline on the highlight side. Even though on the reference photo you see a full outline, I might come in later and add that, but I kind of just like how it's really emphasizing the highlight side with that. This granulation that's happening is very pretty. I'd like to get a little bit of a purple in there. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some ultramarine and put it on the shadow side, just tapping it in, seeing if I can get some of that shadow look. And I want to get kind of evenly around the nostrils so that I can just come in later and soften that. I want to have a little highlight around them. I like doing that, but we don't need it to be too big of a highlight. That purple is really pretty. Just trying to tap it in where I see the darker spots in the nose. Again, I just have ultramarine on my brush, but the brush has been tapping in here so long that basically I have purple on my brush now because it's been picking up some of that opera pink too. And I'm gonna see adding a little bit more. There we go. I just had 1 drop of that and it really went to town. It's really kind of spreading. And I'm going to add another drop of water, see if I can push it away from the highlight area. I like the granulation that's happening a lot. It's really beautiful. The only thing is this is kind of bright and I'm going for a more natural look. I don't want to I want to mute the colors a little bit, but I don't want to get it too muddy and I don't want buff titanium to go everywhere, like overtake it, but I'm just going to see. I'm just going to see what happens if I tap in a little bit of buff titanium to try to mute some of that vibrancy, because it's very intense. And if that's the vibe you're going for, then you're already there. Then you don't have to worry about it. But I wanted to see if I could get more of a natural look in terms of colors for this painting. And that actually looks really cool. I like how that's kind of just hanging out a little bit. Yeah, I like that. That looks really good. So I just dropped in another thing of water there, pushing that pigment hopefully towards the shadow side. That looks awesome. Very happy with that. Now we have warm irises. So we're gonna go ahead and go in with purple. I'll show you my purple here. A nice heavy mix of purple is going to be the outline we use on our reflections, because that way you won't get green if they mix with that gold color. And I'm actually going to go in and do this big kind of reflective area on the pupil within that purple color too. And I'm just adjusting the amount of water I'm using so that you can tell it's purple. If it's a really, really heavy mix of purple, it's gonna kind of look black. And I want it to be noticeably purple. And then I'm bringing it into the iris on the top and on the right side, because those areas of the iris are a little bit darker. They're kind of in shadow. And this purple lends itself really well to making that look like a deeper kind of shadow over the iris. So then we can go in with our blotted water only brush and just barely soften that purple into the reflection just a little bit. It's always more of a challenge for me kind of working small like this. So I have to give myself a little extra patience. That's looking really good. I'm going to tap in a little bit more purple over on the shadow areas. And bringing that purple down a little bit into the iris. That looks cool. It's so fun when it starts to look like something. And it's just kind of working and flowing. I love that. The other thing we can do, even while it's still wet, is give it a little bit more of that gold color, because it just dried pretty light. So I'm going around kind of outlining, tapping up here, and outlining the pupil, because we still want to have a nice little highlight in there. So we're kind of putting it in strategic spots. And I wanted to see if I could blend down into that black outline a little bit. So I'm kind of almost lifting that black too to get the, yeah, that looks really cool. I'm actually gonna just add a tiny bit, if I can, just a tiny bit of water right there. Yeah, and let that maybe It's always a little bit of a challenge to know, to be able to predict how it's going to look when it's dry, if you need to add more water or not. But that's I really like that. It kind of went a little bit crazy right there. Okay, let's do the same thing on the shadow eye with our purple. And I'm mixing up a little bit more so that I get a good consistency and a good purple color. Okay, there's a tad bit more blue in this purple. We're going to see how that looks. Just emphasizing that it's in the shadow. Let's see, and we're painting around those reflections. And a big chunk of the pupil is this purple color. It's like reflective. And a tiny outline on this littler reflection. And then I'm going to go up and put some purple all around on the top of the iris too, to give it that shadow on the top. And I'm going to blend that down into the iris. And then just barely see if we can soften it into those reflections. It's pretty wet still, so I don't want to go too crazy. I'm almost kind of softening it and then pushing it back into that purple. So I kind of almost made the reflection bigger right here by pushing it away into that purple. And then I kind of want this circular reflection to be nice and tight. So I'm not going to soften that one too much. And I'm going to go ahead and see if dropping in a little bit of water right here will make it look nice. And of course we can come back and even put a little bit more of that gold in the shadow area of the eye. And I'm just softening it a little bit into there too. That looks really pretty. I'm just going to lift out a little bit more because right now it's wet and it's kind of going into this area more than I would have liked. So I'm just lifting some of it. And partially that's our fault too, because we're adding water and expecting it to only go in the iris, but it's going to go where it wants to. So again, this is kind of where we talk about babysitting it as it dries, to make sure it's kind of doing either what you want it to do or doing things that are unexpected that you like. You're like, oh wow, I wasn't expecting that, but that looks really cool, and we're gonna leave it alone. And that happens a lot with watercolor, and I love that part of it. Okay, let's see, the nose. We have this purple kind of loaded on our brush already. And my nose is barely wet. So I'm going to go in and kind of tap around the edges to emphasize the shadow side, and wherever she has these prettier, it's almost like her nose itself has an outline on it, which is great for us because that's kind of how we paint noses. So I'm just coming in and putting a little bit more shadow purple while it's still wet, and tapping it in a little bit. That looks really cool. I'm going to put a little bit more purple up here. And that's looking really great. Really happy about that. So let's move on and do a little bit more of the fun work of doing the ears. So zooming out here, we have the light side ear and the dark side ear up on the top. And this is our little breathing room for painting. We don't have to be precise. We just have to have fun. Ears are so much fun. And then you feel like you actually got a lot of the painting done in a short amount of time when you do ears. I'm going to dye it a little bit so you can see where I'm putting the water. And I'm going to just fill up this whole ear shape. Everywhere we drew that ear. And then on the bottom is where maybe I'm a little bit more conservative without painting the whole thing in, because we're going to be pulling color with our grainer brush to depict some of that hair on the bottom, the hairy edges that she has. All right, so she's brown, so I'm not going to outline with black. I'm going to go ahead and let's do this. Let's make a little bit of a brown mix. I'm going to clean off this green well that I was using for a different painting. And I like to save the paint, and so I'm just putting it in my other green secondary well. You can't see that over here. So I'm like lifting it off and then putting it over here. And then we'll finish cleaning it out with a Kleenex. And there we have a nice clean well to mix up some dark brown. So I'm going to go ahead and grab some neutral tint, and I'm not going to be afraid to mix up quite a bit because we're going to be using this color in the body too. So we can just go to town here. This is fresh from the tube, so I don't really have to work to get it out. And it's this really pretty cocoa, dark cocoa brown. That's really pretty. It's fun for me to mix up a really pretty brown like that without having to use purple. That's a lot of fun. Okay, I'm gonna clean off my silver black velvet brush that I like to use for black paint and go ahead and pick up this brown that we just mixed up, a nice heavy mix of brown. Our ears are still nice and wet, so we can keep going here. And the only thing is we are using core right now, and so this might spread more than I anticipate, more than I was like ready for it to, but I'm pretty confident we'll see that my buff titanium will push it back into place. We're gonna find out, and this is gonna be fun. So again, we're just putting this mix. Yours, if you're not using core, will likely not spread as much as mine is. And here we go. It's also granulating really beautifully. The other thing I found even with my American Journey quinacridone gold is that it pushes out so much that it almost makes the paper get dry really fast. Which initially, if you're not used to that, you kind of have to be ready and maybe, because you can see it almost pushed everything, all the water and all the pigment to these pools at the bottom. So that's kind of interesting. I also dragged, oops, I'm going to town here. I also have a little bit of this weird thing happening over here, but I'm going to turn that into a splatter, I think, later. So I'm lifting some of that off and just blending it in here. Oh, that actually looks kind of cool. So I'm gonna let that hang out. Let's go ahead and go in with our buff titanium. Think about what brush I can use for that. What color is this? Okay, this is also brown. So let's clean this off. And we'll do buff titanium on this brush. Let's see how buff titanium pushes these colors. And Let's see, let's hope it does something here. It really pushed everything. It's kind of crazy what happened. I like this blooming that's happening. It's very pretty. This is cool. This is really, it almost looks like a latte. It just makes you want to go to your coffee shop and have a latte. Okay, this is pooling like crazy. I'm gonna see if I can grab some and put it back where it was supposed to be. But pooling isn't bad unless you need it to dry quicker. Okay, so we have the light side and the dark side. So this is pretty dark for the light side ear. I'm gonna go in with a kind of an orangey pink and put some highlight color here. I need a little bit more yellow. Look at me, I'm not going to use Hazel yellow at all, guys. Here I am using it like crazy. But it's your painting, you can do what you want. And I have to keep that in mind too, especially with commissions. If I overthink, like, oh gosh, this has to be perfect because a person's paying for it and it's their, you know, their special pet. And I found that when I do that, I work really tight and it just doesn't, it loses a lot of that fresh spontaneity. And so I actually just pretend like I'm doing it for fun and it's not a commission. And that helps me a ton. That usually is the secret to making sure it looks like a fresh watercolor. So let's go ahead and put in purple for our shadow side color. And it's really dark down here. That buff titanium is kind of taken over. So tapping it. I'm gonna put in more water. Let's see what happens. It's almost like, it's looking like we poured with acrylic or something. Kind of gnarly. I love how that's happening though. It's so funny. It's so weird. I don't know about core. It's different than what I'm used to. And it's definitely making the ears behave a little differently for me. But it's also really pretty. This is pretty. So I'm just kind of manipulating it, seeing if adding water is helping, lifting. I do like lifting, but we should probably be lifting on the light side ear more so than the dark side ear. And what I might do is come in with my buff titanium after it dries to give a little texture effect of some of those hairy spots on his ears, on her ears. I'm just making that look a little bit more purposeful, pretty. That little whatever that happened over there. I'm gonna go in with more of our brown color because it ended up kind of just going everywhere we put water. So it made the whole thing a little bit lighter. Let's see if we can add. Yeah, I don't know. Core might be a new way. I might have to adjust how I work if I have to use core watercolors. I'm gonna put a little bit more here. It's just I'm not used to it spreading quite this much with neutral tint, which is why I usually always paint with black because it kind of goes where I want it to go. And you can see it just goes everywhere. This is nuts. All right, I'm gonna put a little bit more pink into that, pinky orange into this, tapping it, pushing it in. seeing if I can push some of that color back to the edges. Yeah, I would say this is definitely different than what I'm used to. I'm gonna have to get used to core. I do love how it mixes the color that it creates with neutral tint. Okay, so we're lifting a little bit to get some of those pretty highlights back. Now it's looking really good. The other thing we have to keep in mind is these furry edges. So I'm just using my grainer brush and it's blotted. It had a little bit of water, I blotted it. And then we're giving ourselves pulling some color to get a little bit of a fluffy edge. This is so different for me. I feel like I'm doing a core review video right now. And that's the funny thing is, maybe it would behave differently if all my colors were core. I should check the chat again because I bet some of you are commenting about your experience with core. It's just interesting because I'm used to when I drop in water, it's pushing the pigment. It's kind of pushing the pigment. That's good. Some things are happening. All right, I'm gonna lift. I'm just kind of working on these ears a little bit. It's a lot of things are happening in the ears, which is pretty. But what we might have to do is come in once they're not crazy wet with that brown again, because we keep kind of losing that brown edge. It just keeps blending. That's so weird. This is so weird. Yeah, it really goes down. Okay. I'm kind of at this point where I'm like, stay, don't move so far. But the ears are a lot drier than when we started. So hopefully it won't move quite as much now. But we're gonna find out. So I'm just still lifting and manipulating these. This is just, I can't, I don't even know. I'm in this weird, this is weird. This is weird. All right, what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna go in with some straight up neutral tint. See if I can just get that nice outline back that we were looking for on the shadow ear here. So you can see when I'm adding just the plain neutral tint that it doesn't spread as like core does. And we're able to get a little bit more of that outline we were after. There, that looks more like what I'm used to. Isn't that crazy though, how just supplies can totally affect your painting? And I haven't painted with other brand paints in a very long time. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of more purple down here. That looks better. Let's see if we can add a little buff titanium. the highlights are. That's cool, that looks nice. And let's do a little buff titanium too. While this is still wet, it's drying pretty quickly. I have to make sure it's wet enough that it actually deposits onto the paper. There we go. All right, I'm just seeing if I can lift out a little bit more on the light side here. Because we want this one to be brighter than the shadow side. And maybe just have a little bit of neutral tint. That's really pooling. I might have to wait till that gets more dry. All right, that's good enough for the first layer. We might come in and, well, we will come in later and see. Boy, that was an experience. I'm gonna check the chat and see how it's going. Yeah, they are really mixing in interesting ways. You know, at least I lost the highlights too. We had to get them back with lifting, so we might come back in and lift too. My neutral tint explodes into the water, wants to take over. That's interesting. Yeah, so yeah, and my neutral tint kind of stays where it goes, my American Journey brand. So yes, and my paper is, this is New York Central Art Supply 300-pound cold press paper, and it does, yeah, it's very, I'm very happy with how the paper is behaving. I'm not so sure about core watercolors after this experience. This was challenging, but it's a new way. I think there would just be a little bit of a learning curve. Obviously, I think I'm learning right now. I love to be able to let water, see what happens when we let the water dry in there too. If we can maybe get some more granulation happening. This is kind of cool, this outline that's happening over here. I also don't want to fuss with it too much. I wonder if I could mix up a kind of, let's see, I have a purple here, so I might just, I can't really see that. Might see what I can do if I don't know if I need to mix this up. I'm kind of troubleshooting on the fly here with these ears. I love his face, her face though. Like, it looks kind of bat-like, which I think is really cool. So let's see if we can mix up our own. So Azo yellow, opera pink. See if we can get our own kind of orangey colors happening. If we're able to, I don't know, we're almost color resisting now at some spots that are pretty dry. Pushing that, the pigment away where we're putting this. That looks cool. I like that. I like that. That's pretty up there. And then I'm just going to paint. I think we must, maybe some buff titanium's in there too. I don't know. If it is giving me this opaque quality, kind of. It's funny, I was like, the ears are so fast. And now I just can't stop fussing with them. Like, what? Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it's just is what it is. It's still very beautiful, but it's just not quite what I was expecting would happen with the ears. Very pretty though. I'm gonna throw a little bit more purple up here. There, I like that. That's really nice. All right, happy about that. Yes, her face is so cute, right? Little Hazel, you just want to pick her up. She's like a little bundle. Let's move on. We were thinking we were gonna maybe do the muzzle next. And I'm gonna go ahead and just do a pretty thin layer of water on the muzzle area. Not too much, because we're not going to want our paint to spread too crazy. And we had mixed up some of that pretty orange. I like that look a lot. So I'm going to put some of that orange over here. Bring it up over here, and she's got some color around here. And let's see. We have some of that purple that we mixed up too. You can see both of those colors. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of purple. And then I think I'm going to go in with my grainer brush and some buff titanium. Let's go around the edges a little bit first. With that buff titanium. And this is the shadow side, so I'm not going to be quite as sparing on this side. Drop in some more of that purple on the shadow side. And I'm trying to keep an eye too on the ears as they're drying. I just dropped in some water. I just want to push some of that pigment back. See if we can push it. I think in general it's just drying a little bit more flat than I would have anticipated. This is looking cool. Adding that water is helping. It's starting to granulate and push the pigment. So I like that. I like what happened when we did that. Okay, I think I have buff titanium on this brush. Let's see. Got buff titanium, we got our water brush. Just gonna grab another brush here. Okay, I don't want to get too distracted by the ears because the muzzle is drying. How fun, it looks so fun though. I like what's happening there. So let's see if we need to add a little bit of greener brush. This is a big greener brush for a little painting. I'm gonna add a little bit more purple while it dries. And now I'm in this nervous place to add this brown. I'm just being very sparing and seeing how it reacts. It's looking good. It's looking good so far. It's sure does like to spread, doesn't it? I don't know, core watercolor's interesting. I really love, though, that little hint of orange right there. That turned out so pretty. I want to make sure that it doesn't dry even lighter than that. So I'm going back in and putting a little bit more orange on those 2 spots, 3 spots. And it's pretty dry now, so I have to soften it in some of those spots. I like that. Okay, now we can do kind of more fun part here with the purple. Sorry about my camera shaking there. That purple sweater. So let's go in and we're gonna do paint everywhere where we have that pretty purple sweater. And I haven't painted a collar for you guys to see how I do collars, but I think I'm going to approach this sweater in a similar way, in a very kind of less is more fashion. So painting with water, we have our purple brush here, and I want to make it a, let's see, you gotta get that right purple. Mix up the right purple here. And I'm going to start over on the dark side, that shadowy side. I'm going to see what happens if we add in a little cobalt. The cobalt has a little bit of opacity to it, so it might make, I don't know, it might make it kind of cool looking. Yeah, I kind of like that a lot, actually. It's getting a really pretty purple, and maybe it'll granulate even more too if we do it that way. So I'm really saturating the shadow side, and I'm going to make sure we have a lot of water. So I'm dropping in a little bit more water too, and it's fuzzy though, so I love these fuzzy edges that are happening. So we got to make sure we paint all the way to the edges of the sweater. It's really granulating in a beautiful, beautiful way. This is so cute. So I'm just going to go in and make sure I have all the way water all the way to the edges, so the paint isn't afraid to go all the way to the edges. Okay, that looks good. You can pull color too to get if there's some fur kind of extending over. So I'm going to go back in, drop a little bit more on this dark side. And then, I didn't re-dip yet. I'm even kind of washing my brush off a little bit. And I'm just going to do a watery mix on the highlight side. There we go. And you could even add a little bit more pink to just emphasize that this is the highlight side. It's just getting more light. And it's more of a pinkier purple on this side. So this is very similar to how I would do a collar, where you just basically just paint the shape and then let it granulate. The other thing I do with collars too is I really drop in the water to push the paint to the edges of the shape. And it just makes it look really cool. So as this dries, I might continue to do that. A little bit there, kind of not too much. I'm gonna let that facilitate it, help it move to the edges. And just making it have a fluffy edge, a very organic edge. So I'm going to just drop in water here and let it push the pigment to the edges. I think she has a little bit of a pink collar on the sweater that's kind of peeking out. This is so cute. I wonder who knitted this for her, or if like she bought it online. It's just adorable. All right, I'm gonna put a little bit more cobalt around on the shadow end. And then just dropping in, it's kind of pooling. So I'm gonna lift a little bit out in the center and then drop in some more water and let it go to the edges. It's just the granulation that's happening. I love it. That's gorgeous. And it's a little fluffy right here. There's some hairs kind of spilling over the sweater. So we can pull some of that color up and make that detail on that part. Kind of right here too a little bit. And putting a little bit more on the shadow side. That just this dynamic, this difference between the light and the dark side always is the best part of a portrait. I mean, everything's great. You need everything to work, but this is It's just it's a really special way to do it. So I'm lifting a little bit more color off the highlight, but I still wanted to do those fun watercolory things. I should really use my clean water here. So I'm going back in and still putting some water back in. So lifting some pigment, but keeping it really watery so that it can do watercolory things. That's a fun, how fun was that? That was fun. I dare say that was more fun than the ears. I think I'm spoiled, you know, because I've been doing this for so long. I forget what it's like to put paint down and not quite know what it's gonna do, and it's good. I have to get some experience with that is a good thing, especially if I'm teaching, because then it kind of puts me back in the seat of somebody who's maybe new, doesn't know what to expect with watercolor. So I just put some more water in the ears and push some pigment back to the edges. Ideally, I just wanted more watercolor effects to happen in those ears. That didn't really happen, so I'm just trying to see if I can get that back. Okay, so then it was kind of dark side, light side after the sweater. We do need this sweater to dry, so I'm gonna wait, and we need more work in the face. So I'm gonna maybe go around the eyes, put a little bit more detail in the eyes. I kind of wanted another layer in the eyes here too. Okay, let's go ahead and just do the face. So like the head. We'll work dark side and then we'll do the light side, and then we'll just try to capture the detail in the hair and then of the face area right now. So I'll go in and just paint with water, a thinner layer, not too crazy. And what I'm going to do is avoid the really bright eyebrow shapes so that those can stay that creamy color that we can put in there. I'm pulling a little bit of color from the ears so that the face kind of blends into the ears. Potentially, we'll see if that happens. And continuing to paint with water along the face. Just making sure we avoid the sweater. And then she has some light side here, so I'm not going to paint that. And I'll paint a little bit of the light side. And I'll go down into her nose a tiny bit. Okay, we can go ahead and let this color spread since we know it really likes to do that now. I'm going to grab a little bit more of that brighter red. And let it spread into there. It's so fun when you can start to see things take shape and have a little bit of contrast. Can be very encouraging. I'm coming in with buff titanium. We'll see how that behaves. With the core. just kind of softening it over a little bit. That's kind of neat. I'm okay with this. Lifting some. Putting a little bit well, that's kind of neat. That worked out. Let's I want to wait till this dries because it seems like when I add buff titanium it just muddles into it. And I want it to be different. I want it to be differentiated from the brown. So I'm gonna maybe wait till this dries before I go in and do the lighter hair work on the dark side of Hazel. So what we can maybe do now is, I love on the light side of paintings to have those visible brush strokes and keep it really minimal. Because if I painted the whole thing, even variegating it like we did with the sweater, it would just lose. It would lose. It would lose. I'm going to put down my brushes because I think what I'm going to do is work in tandem with my grainer brush and my visible brush strokes. So I'm grabbing our brown. I'm getting it more on that red side of the brown since we are working on the highlight side. And let's see. Let's go ahead and do an area of brown here. And I'm going to get more water because I want this to stay wet so we can manipulate it if we decide we need to. So then we can go in with our greener brush. Just going to loosen some of those bristles. So they're kind of wet, it's blotted, I separated them. And I'm going to make it a little bit fuzzy. I don't need it too fuzzy though. And he's got dark right next to here too. So let's go in. I gotta be careful because this is the light side. Let's see if we can add a little bit here. Okay. Oh wait, I think I did that wrong. I think that is actually buff titanium. Yeah, because this is right next to the muzzle. So let's lift that out. Hopefully you're a few steps behind me if you're doing this with me. This is actually kind of cool because it looks like the tan color once you lift it out. That looks pretty good. So we got to, I want to bring it all the way up to her snout because it's kind of a cleaner edge right there. Yeah, I like that. That looks better. Okay, let's see. This is still wet, so it's a little challenging to keep moving on this because we can't quite move everywhere. I'm going to lift a little bit of that. I just don't want it too dark since it's on the light side of the painting. right, what I think I'm going to do is I just want to get some detail. It's looking a little muddly. Muddly? That's a word. It's a word for watercolor now. And I'm actually going to be looking at the brighter reference photo that I made. And once I switched to that, I realized this is kind of a little too dark. So I'm going to lift some of that too. And adding water is good anyway because it'll let it granulate, make it prettier. All right, so this part I think is going to be a little bit more boring because I want to get in some of this detail. So we're going to see if I can switch between. Now I'm thinking that our brown mix won't spread if we're working on dry paper and giving ourselves a little bit of a fail-safe by working on that drier paper. I'm actually going to grab some of this orange. She's got some, this pretty little orange, orangey pink outline area. I'm grabbing some purple too, and I'm going to give her that pretty outline around her eye. I like that. That looks really nice. Come in with a little bit more orange and pink. Okay. So I'm just trying to work over here, and like I was hoping, we'll see if we can get away with doing some of these details, these fuzzy details on drier paper. So I'm gonna have the brown on the silver black velvet, and then I have a size 2 of a round brush. If you have anything that comes to a point that you can get a fine line will work fine for this. You could also use a grainer brush. It's just gonna be, we're working tight and we're working small, so I just needed a little bit more control. This is wet now, so I'm not gonna go in there quite yet, but we're gonna see if we can get some details and make it look refined. So sometimes I like to do little hairy edges and then soften one side of the hairy edge into the rest of the painting. So grainer brush would definitely work too. I'm softening that buff titanium into that eyebrow that she has. And this is close to dry. But maybe we could get away with doing a little bit of these details now. So in some areas I'm kind of scrubbing to soften hard edges that just look a little too harsh, or maybe lifting some paint that got where it shouldn't really be. And then the thing we need to do with these eyes is just make sure they have a really clean edge. So I think I have brown on there actually. So I want to get some of that black, heavy mix of neutral tint, but don't have your brush pooling with it. Just have a good amount on there. And give yourself a nice crisp outline that you might have lost as you were painting. And I'm kind of making that top edge a little bit fluffy and hairy. And then I'm just blending it into the eye a little bit with that shadow that we emphasized. And some of that hair just got a little harsh, so I'm just softening that in too. And softening that eyebrow kind of thing that she's got going on, the bottom edge. And then I'm gonna soften this too. So I'm just kind of scrubbing some of that out to make a nice highlight shape around her eye. And that's typically what I found with animal eyes too, is that nice crisp black outline surrounded by a little bit of a highlight seems to be what works really well, what makes them look like a real animal eye. So just lifting out a little bit of a highlight. It's on the shadow side, so we might be lifting too much. Maybe we don't have to worry about it quite so much. All right, I want to go back to the brown and just keep working on making sure we have this crisp detail around the eye. then softening it if it needs to. But we don't want to soften too much because we can lose some of that crispiness. All right, coming in. I think it's time to see if I can get away with the grainer brush. Yeah, that looks really nice. So I have buff titanium on here though. So I'm gonna rinse that out. Okay, this is a really heavy mix. I think I need a little bit more water on there. There we go. That looks really good. There, I like that. I like that richer red brown color too. That's looking really nice. And the sweater is dry now, so we can get away with touching it if we need to. Actually, I'm going to blot that in, I think. I like that. I like that red brown. That's very pretty. I'm going to just work along with that since we have that kind of loaded into our brush. What other areas might need that red brown color from the grainer brush? And like softening little bits of them to get that muddly look that she's got in some areas. Adding a little bit more color to here. So yeah, this is the boring part to watch, I'm sure, but it's kind of, it's also really important to make it look dimensional and not so muddly flat, I suppose. Okay, so we can kind of come in and do the same thing on the other eye. Give it a little bit of a crisper. Okay, that sweater is nice and dry, so I'm just going to crisp up that edge with my neutral tint. And this is like the white of her eye, so a little bit of pink in there would be kind of nice. And I'm just softening the bottom edge, which is kind of another way to kind of crisp it up too. Alright, so I'm actually going to lift that line out, I think, because I think it would look better if it was a little bit brighter. Yeah, that looks nicer. I kind of like that better. So I'm just softening it here too. And I think I'm going to come in with some of that orange. Oops, sorry, that was loud. So we have our orange that we made with our, what we got here? Our Azo yellow and our opera pink. And I'm going to go ahead and just do kind of the light side shading. That would look really nice. So let's see. I gotta have that grater brush pretty dry. There we go, to pull some of that color and get those bristles separated. Just grabbing some of that orange here. So let's see them face over here, and then putting a little bit of the orange over here too. And I'm gonna blend it in. And I'm just tapping some more orange over here while it's wet. I'm gonna grab a little buff titanium even. See if that helps. Still pretty wet though. That looks cool. That might be most of the color I want to put on there. All right, I think I need a little bit of a break from this area. We can maybe do the feet. So let's see if I can get the feet in there. Sorry about the shakies. There we go. And sometimes when you're just kind of feeling like, oh, this is a challenge. And there are days like that with watercolor. You know, when you try out a new color and you're expecting great things and it all goes to crap. No, it didn't all go to crap. Okay, let's just calm down. It's just a painting. I can redo it. I don't think I'm gonna need to. Actually, I love it. I really love it. I just have some more work to do on it. Okay, let's just see if we can paint. I'm gonna go back to my quinacridone gold from Cheap Joe's American Journey. Oh, look at how pretty that is. See, now I just want to put it some other places. Now I know why I've always used this color. It's so pretty. It's blending over here, which is kind of pretty. Sometimes it's hard to know when to let things happen and when to let them go. I kind of like that. I'm gonna let that go. It's a little on the green side, but I kind of like that. It looks abstract in a cool way. Okay, so now we're just doing some quick leg. And I'm gonna actually grab some of that core color here too, because she's got pretty dark legs at the top. And I'm just painting on dry paper. I'm not doing anything too fancy. And I grabbed in some neutral tint for the very top of her legs. And I'm gonna kind of see what I want to do is just kind of go right almost up to that sweater line and leave a little bit of a white outline. I think that might be the best looking edge. For what we're doing. Let's see. Okay, I think I went too far. I bet that was actually part of the sweater drawing. So I'm just gonna lift that off a little bit. Just didn't look quite right to me. All right, I got my buff titanium brush. Let's see if I can kind of go along the edges and let it run in together. And painting along the shadows. And then I'm just going to grab it like this. There we go. And I'm just going to make sure it's out to the edges of where we painted. She's got this toe is kind of in shadow here. This one has some shadow. It's full of buff titanium right now though. And then there's a little bit of a shadow right there. And then of course she's got her cute little toes. So sometimes if you don't want to overwork these areas, and I found that just doing them fast, but leaving yourself a little bit of like a white space, like a white outline, you can see that. I'm going to move it down a little bit. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay. But kind of leaving a little bit of a white outline can be all that it really needs to look good. She's got some reflections too on her toes, her little toenails. And then what you could do is once this dries, I might just pull some color into the rest of her leg so that it looks better. So it's not white, because her leg isn't white. Okay, grabbing a little of that quinacridone too. And I like painting with a flat brush for these areas. It tends to look just a little bit more organic and not so tight. If you just allow the brush to make those more geometric shapes. I want to leave a little bit of a white outline up here if I can. And then I'm gonna pull some color because that's pretty dark. Pull some color in here. And I'm actually gonna clean that off. Kind of like that. Those shapes that are happening. Very pretty. And giving her her little toenails. Her little toesies. And that's fun. That's fun because it's just quick. It's like a quick, like the ears kind of situation where you can have a little bit of a quick win. I really like that. I just think that's really pretty right there. I'm going to add a little bit of water. I think those moments where watercolor just kind of is like, I'm going to do what I want and doesn't really make a lot of sense, can just be so pretty. I just think we have to leave space in our paintings for that kind of stuff. For like, this happened and there's a splatter here and this blended into the sweater. And those moments can just look so good. They can just add a lot of interest to your painting. So I'm just lifting a little bit here. And I'm going to soften this into the rest of the ear. I really like how that quinacridone gold made this highlight side really rich. That turned out really pretty. So we'll come back here and soften these too. But we gotta wait for those to dry. I'm just kind of bringing that down. Okay, very happy with that. That looks really fun. So this is dry now, so we can actually, I'm gonna grab my other grainer brush, my 1/2-inch flat grainer brush. Oh, you probably didn't see a lot of that. I apologize. I wasn't showing you everything that I was doing. I'm sorry. I just was talking about how this quinacridone was blending into the sweater, and I like that a lot. And then, so I just let that happen, but then I lifted some of it out to make it lighter on this highlight side. And it's giving it this really pretty warm glow too that I really like. And then I also put some on the ear here and softened it in. So that's all I did up there. And you can also see too, when we add water to these shapes, it pushes the pigment out to the edges. Looks so good. I really like doing that. So now I grab my 1/2-inch grainer, my 1/2-inch flat grainer, and I'm gonna see if I can do all the darkest dark areas and then be done with them. I have way too many brushes in my hand. I'm just gonna check in with chat too, just to see if anybody's, how it's going. Okay, cool. Well, your adventure with core. Oh yes, we have to call it an adventure because every adventure has its own set of challenges. Okay, so I have this core color, and it really is just so beautiful. And we're working small, so we're gonna see if I can do a heavy mix of this pretty core brown. I'm gonna tap it around and then see if maybe I can separate the bristles here. See if I can get a good, because she's got this pretty little fluffy edge, but it's not crazy fluffy, just a little bit fluffy. There we go. I like that. Around her muzzle. And then of course we have the longer hair down here, this side. I'm actually gonna transition if I can. Now I just kind of made that. I'll show you guys what I'm trying to mix up is a purpley brown. Just to add some more of that shadow color on this side. And I think actually what I might do is just lay some down and then come in with my grainer brush and blend it in. to maybe, I think what I'm going to do is blend it down, soften it down a little bit too. Because I kind of like what happened here with this color. You don't necessarily want to lose that. And let's see if we can get that purple to go up here too. Okay, blend that up if we can, if it will let us. And then I'm just gonna pull some of this and soften it in. I'm gonna lift a little bit too. I really want this to be lighter. Okay. I'm going to get a little bit more water on my brush. That's pretty. I might just soften that once it's dry. Let's see. We have, this is the white fur, the lighter fur next to her. So she has a little bit of dark fur here. So hopefully this is kind of the last of the dark that we got to get it on her lighter side. I'm just going to come in and actually put some on here, right there. There, I like that. I like that it's not too grain or brushy either. It's not just like overdone with grain or brush. Gotta just kind of, sometimes you just gotta hint with certain things. That's looking really cool. Let's see, I'm gonna lift this up a second. This likely has some paint right here. There we go. All right, the other thing I want to do is I really like this quinacridone highlight that happened. So what I'm going to try to do is see if I can just do some visible brush strokes, highlights on the light side of Hazel. nose too. Sometimes that highlight, the glaze of a highlight color can just make the whole painting pop. Look really, really pretty. And I think it also look cool if we just put a little bit next to those other colors in her leg. And then we can maybe even pull some of that color in a kind of messy way. Oh, can you see her legs? You can't see what I did, I'm sorry. I just put some on the leg here, right here, and then I pulled it in. I'll do it on this leg now so you can kind of see some quinacridone here. And then I'm just kind of softening it into the rest of her leg. And I want to make sure I leave some white space. Looks cool. I like that a lot. Let's see, we're kind of getting close to just needing some hair detail to kind of differentiate her features. Yeah, I love, how fun is that highlight color? Looks so pretty. And then what you could do is just check and see if there's anywhere you want to do a shadow color in a similar way with a pretty purple. And she's very shadowy over here. And she's got a lot of shadow on her ear. Some of those blooms that are happening are really pretty. Oh, this was purple too. Okay. But this is just the magic of a highlight color and a shadow color can just really bring a lot of depth in both color and value to your painting if you need it. Okay, so she's got her ear and then her sweater. This kind of comes out almost all the way out to here. And a lot of, I'm going to put some purple here too. As kind of like my darkest dark. So then we have some of her eye detail, really pretty. I think it would just benefit from some buff titanium details too, similar to kind of what we already did over here. So I have my size 2 brush now, since we are just working so small for me, this is pretty small. I've done really small painting. I've done like a 4x4 and a 5x5 painting before. And really, those paintings, they just kind of feel like drawings. Really, they're just kind of like more like drawings. They can be fun, but it's a lot of detail for me, which is the hard part. And I love big areas of color where watercolor has the space to do crazy things. I really like that. So I think that's where I struggle with working really small. It's because of the funnest part of watercolor for me, and it just doesn't have space to do the things that I love for it to do. So at this point, this is kind of the rest that I'm going to do, I think, is I'm just going to come in, put some fluffy highlights with buff titanium, and then I'll probably do some splatter too. And then I might need to, step away from it and take a look at it with fresh eyes in a few hours, which is always a good idea, especially if you've had any more frustrating moments within the painting, to make sure you just give it a minute before you make any big decisions. But I love buff titanium. It's such a warmer color, like warmer light color than like a titanium white. It's because, I don't know, titanium white or Chinese white just has this blue undertone that can be kind of harsh. Unless you're working, unless you want cooler tones in your painting, then that might be perfect. But you can see how it's just kind of taking shape now more and coming to life with the addition of some of these more in focus details. Let's see. She's got, what does she have? She has some cute see if I can soften. I'm just like picking up that neutral tint. I wanted to soften that highlight around the nose. see if I can get some more detail on her muzzle. Let me see, I'm gonna go back. Okay, try to keep her body differentiated from her head. It's been a little bit of a challenge for me with this one. Okay, let's see. Well, what do we got? What are we looking at? All right. Just adding a little bit more of like a very dark brown, very neutral tint heavy brown in the darkest dark areas that I can decipher. Just help us get some dimension on her. Okay, things are happening. All right, I think this part is actually kind of part of her cheek. It's a little hard to tell in the reference photo, but I want it to kind of match this area that she's got. So I'm gonna just lift out a little bit of that, see if I can make that match. Just think that might look a little bit better. So just scrubbing with a blotted brush, cleaning it off as I go, trying to make this shape and this shape match a little bit better. I like that. That does look better. I'm going to see if I can just kind of, there we go. You just needed a little bit of information so you could really see where her face ends and her body begins. That looks really nice. Okay, I think what I want to do last, probably not last, because I am going to come back and just check on it. But even with like when we painted the German Shepherd, I thought I was going to do more after the live ended, and I ended up not. I actually liked how it had a little bit of this kind of, not unfinished quality, but just minimal information somewhat quality that made it more interesting. So I totally planned on coming back to it. And then when I did, I came back to it and I looked at it and I just thought it looked really good. And it didn't need anything. And I was really happy with it. So I might not need to do that here. I have buff titanium, a nice heavy mix on my grainer brush, and I've put a little bit of that quinacridone gold in there too. This will show up better on darker areas of fur. But she has some kind of like brindley areas, well, areas that have both colors. So I wanted to show that a little bit. And then get a little bit of this, separating the bristles here, blotting a little bit of paint off. Well, that's kind of fun. That's kind of fun. I want to put in some whiskers because then I can kind of go in and refine her muzzle a little bit. She's really cute little tiny ones. I'm letting the pen skip a little bit too so that they're not super harsh on the light side of her face. That looks really cute. And you don't need too many. You just want a little, you don't want it to attract too much attention. And don't space them out too evenly either. Kind of want them to overlap and look very organic. I'm even going to go in and give myself a little bit of a cheat sheet here with where her mouth is. There we go. That little bit of information really helps make her mouth look better. So I have that core brown color. I'm coming in with my size 2 and just doing a little bit more detail. I'm going to get my blotter brush here. Making this side darker. I'm kind of softening that bottom edge too, pulling a little bit of pigment from the fur into it so it's not too harsh. That can help make it just look a little bit nicer. And then the other thing we can do is just emphasize some of those hairs that are right by the whiskers and right by the nose. Taking that same brown and just going wherever I think it needs to be a little darker. That looks really nice. Just a little bit of work on that muzzle really did a lot. Without too many whiskers. Looks really good. Alright, let's just zoom out a little bit and just see how she looks as a whole portrait. And what she might benefit from. I think what could look really cool is even more of a shadow, like a glazed brushstroke shadow on the sweater area. So if we can pick up some purple and just lay down a nice brushstroke. I like how that looked. I kind of want it just a little bit darker. Right there. And I'm just gonna blend out just this part. I got a lot of buff titanium on my brush there. I like that a lot. The other cool thing we could do is do a little bit of a purple shadow on her feet. So a nice watery mix of purple. And we know the light coming is from over there. So we'll give her a pretty shadow coming out this way. I clean my brush a little bit better there. And seeing over here. She actually has a little bit of a shadow in the picture, which is awesome because then you don't have to guess so much where her shadow is. And you gotta keep it a little bit accurate. You don't have to go crazy. A little bit of a white space there. And I'm just going to bleed the shadow out over here. And I want it to make it a little bit smoother and nice and light as you get towards the edge. This color pulling over here is kind of balancing that out in a nice way. I have some splatter. I had a little splatter. That's pretty. What I might do is soften this splatter and make it a little bit less dark. And then she had some other splatters kind of over here. So I'm just going to add, I'm just adding a little bit more to make it look a little bit more splattery. It's cool. I do like, oh, and we have her tail. We do have the tail. I'm going to just try my grainer brush here. I think it has some buff titanium on there. I'm just going to see if I can kind of go like that and blend it in a little bit because her hair is not quite that long. So a little bit of water. Blend in some of that hair. That looks great. And then maybe a little bit of quinacridone. That's kind of our highlight. Ended up being our highlight color. Looking really pretty. Okay, I'm happy where it's at right now. Like I said, I'm going to come back. I'm going to come back and probably just see if there's any more refinement I need to do. Maybe crisp up the eyes. Put maybe, I don't know. I'm not quite sure yet. So that's kind of why I think it's time to just step away and come back at it with fresh eyes. But all in all, I really like it. I love her expression. Really fun. So I think that's it. I need 1 second here. Let's see. She's so cute. Oh my gosh. All right. I just want to check. Actually, if you want to keep an eye on the painting for a hot second, I'm going to check the chat. There's still 36 people here. That's amazing. I just felt like this one was kind of a little harder. We ran into some challenges, and doing that detail work can be kind of boring. So if you're still here, amazing. Thank you so much. I'm glad, Kathy, thank you. I'm so glad you learned a lot. The quinacridone gold glaze at the end, I agree. I think that really helped just give this light side so much life. Life was a good way to put it, Kathy. And the values, really at the end of the day, it's about those values. And so making sure that there's a really prominent dark side and light side, and then not doing too much. So that's why too, it's like, okay, it's a good time to step away, come back, give it some furry edges. I want to show you guys too another Chihuahua painting that I did. It's in plastic here, but you can see how it's just kind of not too overworked, but there's a really good mix of really in focus detail with some of this fur and then some really blurry watercolory abstract. And then there's these white abstract geometric shapes where we didn't paint. So I tried to keep that in mind as I was painting Hazel too. But that core watercolor really behaved differently than I'm used to. So I'm giving myself a lot of grace with that, knowing that that happened. But this was successful in that her expression is just gorgeous. So the reference pic next to the painting, I don't know how to do that. I don't have it printed, so I don't think I can do that on the live right now. But that is a really good thing to do when you're just kind of looking side by side. It's helpful. I'm sorry, I won't be able to do that on the live, but you can definitely download the reference photo and do it on your own and compare it. So, yeah, not boring at all. Oh my gosh, you guys are so sweet. You know, you have easy paintings that just flow. And I think it's easier too for me to have paintings that just flow when I'm not recording myself and trying to teach at the same time. So like I'll just jam on the cranberries and just get in this flow zone. And of course you can have really successful paintings happen that way. So, but I'm definitely very happy with this. This looks really cute. She's just a cutie. So I'm going to sign it. I'm going to do a couple more detail things if I need to. I got to take a step away and just come back to it. But this was really fun. I'm really, really happy. And thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for all the kind words. I didn't see any more specific questions, so I don't think I have anything else more to say. But we do have the core review video on Saturday, which is awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun to go over. I bought the whole set of the main 7 colors that I like to use with core in the same colors except for quinacridone gold because I couldn't find that. And I replaced it with that red oxide. Is that what it's called? Yeah, transparent red oxide, which is beautiful, but wow, it just goes everywhere. So yeah, I'm gonna have a lot of fun experimenting with that and coming back to you with my thoughts and how they really differ from other watercolors, the watercolors that I use. So thank you so much. That's all I have for today. Make sure you email me your questions, and if you have any more before our next live isn't until a week from today when we paint the corgi together. So I will see you then, and another video comes out on Saturday. Thank you so much for being here. You guys are just the life of the party for me. I love painting with you. I love just knowing that we're all kind of painting together and we all love watercolor together. So thank you, and I will see you in the next video. Happy painting!